Yes, and there we are with another episode of Dance Gems. Today we're going to talk about beyond judgment, subjectivity, and assumptions in dance. But of course, we will never do that without my good friend and colleague Ton Greten. Let's see if Ton is there. Hey, Ton.
Hey Sean, nice to see you
Nice to see you too.
again. A podcast.
Again, a podcast. It's definitely always one of the highlights of my week to talk about these
Yes.
things. And I'm always also surprised what we come up with. But the topic of today, I was thinking about beyond judgment, subjectivity, and assumptions in dance. Now,
Yeah.
maybe there are a lot of good things in there, and maybe, things we should think about a little bit more. So, what do you think?
Yeah, fantastic. Because in our daily life, we use also many of these words and we get a lot of influence by our environment. And I grow up with subjective words, assumptions, judgment, prejudgment. You have a different word for it also.
Yeah, prejudice.
Prejudice. And yeah, that's quite interesting. I discovered a few years ago to ignore them and try also to give context when I'm making an assumption in my lessons, in my dance lessons, and it made a huge difference than before.
Yeah.
And also w- something new, what I'll also try to do is not to use the word not. That's a
That's
quite
funny. Yeah, that's
funny,
funny.
yeah?
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. But that was intentional. That was intentional.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's good. Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So let's we'll dive into why you and I are practically aligned. That's an assumption, by the way. But we talked about it so much that it's a pretty safe assumption. We are pretty much aligned on these things, and but by all means, sometimes we catch ourselves that we accidentally still do it once in a while, and then we point to each other saying, "Hey, Tom, that's an assumption," or we do it
Yes.
ourselves afterwards, like, "Oh, that's an assumption." So it requires a little bit practice to do that. But first of all, of course, we need to understand when and when not to use. Now I use the word not to. When and when not to use subjective language. Yeah, there are, of course, enough times when it is pretty okay. But when you teach, yeah, when you teach, it's, yeah, subjectivity is
I
as
yes.
natural as objectivity.
Yes. I'm quite hard for myself, Sean, because I train myself every day
Hmm.
for the last year, and there get always more new things to me where I have to think which word I could use for it. So we will start with the subjective words like natural, normal. They use this in dancing a lot. Normal. Yeah, what is normal? What is natural? Good, wrong, better. Um,
Ugly,
word
beautiful,
ugly, beautiful, difficult. That's
easy.
also many times easy, easy. Yeah, it's easy. The opposite. Oh, and without context. So they throw these words in it. I used them also before. Now practice this already 3 years, I think. And I can give some examples later how I avoid good or better or bad or
Yeah.
I don't use these words. They also not pop up anymore in my head. Sometimes good in some context, and then I think how I can avoid avoid this word and not use it. You heard?
No,
You heard myself to say not use that. And not will say actually it's a negative use. Actually I could say how I can use this word, not the subjective words, but how I can avoid them.
no, you
And
could also say, how can I use only objective words? Then you have
yes.
positive. So, but everything is always contextual. Everything has a context. There are enough
Mm,
context where subjective words fit really well.
mm,
Very often in teaching, when we want to have clear communication, objective words convey what we want to teach better. In this case, that is a subjective word, but it fits. So in the context of my sentence, it fits.
I, I would use the different word for it. Maybe develop or yeah, what you want to develop.
Yeah, but we can also lose audience if our language becomes unnatural. Yeah, because we only talk about objective words. Then we sound like a weird college professor.
Ah, yes. No, no, I'm quite agree because our environment talks like that. But when you are the only one who try to avoid that and try to speak differently, then you could influence your environment also, but you are the only one and they wouldn't understand you in the beginning.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
uh,
Well,
actually,
let's not argue about this, Tom, because you're pretty hardwired on this. And I say language is beautiful, so to skip all the subjective words would cut out a beautiful, and I do it on purpose now, a beautiful area in context that you could use. So if we talk about, let's say, looking at art, and I say to you good and ugly, that would be not convey so much because that's very subjective. Yeah, that's very
mm,
subjective. That's the area we talk about. But there are enough areas which I then would stimulate you to look in where subjective words actually add something to the communication. And I think
mm,
that is the goal of this podcast, is when and when not to use subjective words, or when and when not to use objective words.
yes, but I'm quite hard for myself, so I it's black or white in my way of
Yeah,
thinking.
but that's full of
So I put it
assumptions.
very extreme.
That's
Yeah,
full of
full
assumption.
assumption.
That is full of assumption. That statement itself
It's,
would be an assumption.
yes, uh, yes, absolutely. But I try to train myself to ignore it, and that's really, really hard, Sean. I start with my lessons with my children, so I say to them, please, we not use, not you, we use. So
Objective
you hear
words.
my correction? We yes, we use different words for good, for bad, for better, for difficult, for easy, for normal, for natural. Then, when somebody, I give them a task, and then the task, they are busy with it. And then I said, okay, that what I asked from you, I could perceive it with my senses. And so also that I explained already before. But this is already a strange language now, how I talk. I could, that's an assumption, I could imagine that.
Yeah. But what you
Hmm.
did is, of course, you gave context behind it,
Hmm.
right? So in a lot of communication areas, we avoid subjective words, or we use objective words, hoping that the meaning of that objective word is commonly understood in the same way. Even an objective word can be, but if you say left or right, that's pretty objective. Yeah, left or right. But
Yes,
it's still
because we
depending from the perspective of where you stand from. So it's actually,
yes,
this is just such an interesting topic. It's the more you think about it, yeah, it's a challenge. Let's put it a challenge or a development to teach with objective words.
yeah, yes, because when I give an assignment in the group,
Hmm.
then I asked maybe close your feet.
Hmm.
And later I will do another example from close the feet in a different way, on a negative way. But close the feet. And I will say to them, okay, I see for myself, I perceive that you closed the feet. But I said before to them, if you feel that you didn't close, then raise your hand. Because when I have a group and I have 20 people in that group, I cannot, I'm not able, you can hear the word again, not, my ability goes above to see all these dancers at the same moment that they close the feet. So I will miss definitely some dancers. And this is why I say raise your hand, because when you raise your hand, you are thinking also and you're feeling and you are busy in the assignment. And if I not can perceive it then in that context, then you help me also in my perceiving and in my thinking. And you get more attention also then. So it works vice versa. And it helps a lot, Sean, when the dancers dance now. And I have a small group in hip hop, 6 children in it, 10 years old. I explain them the sensory perceiving. I explain them many times already the proprioception and how this works together. And it takes some weeks. It is not tell them one time and they have it. It takes some maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks with a lot of small repetitions, and then they have it. It gets more challenging when somebody new come in the group because we have already a different terminology and different language, and that's quite interesting. Also, how to pick that up. That's really a hard challenge because the other ones are already much more trained by these words. But it helps a lot when they help me also in my perceiving, how I perceive them and how they perceive themselves in that words. And that's really incredible. What they told me also, Tom, you are quite strange because in this lesson here, in the dance lesson, we speak like this. But on our school, exactly what you said, it's quite natural to say this is bad, this is good, this is natural, this is normal. And I understand that too. But in my lessons, if we not use that and we are trained on it,
Yeah.
doesn't matter which age they have, that's wonderful. It's like you have your own language in that group.
Yeah, no, I do. Otherwise, I would not agree with you. I think in a subject like dance, which easily can be full of subjective words, right? Huh? You hear that in a subject
And you
like
are
dance,
smiling already.
there can be full of subjective words. But our goal is, of course, we would like to have clarity and and clear
Yeah.
understanding of what we teach. We would also like to be what we call in English impartial and fairness, and we would be compliant with the guidelines with what we want to teach, right? So that's why we try to avoid all subjective words. I think we should never close our mind that there are other contexts, you know, where we should not avoid subjective words. Let me give you an example of that, and then we can explore that
Mhm.
deeper. If you look at it from a psychological point of view, all emotions are subjective words: anger, rage, happiness, and it would be actually go against, if for instance in the healing, if we only allow to not to do that in objective words, and that would also be from a psychological point of view impossible. We can scale it, right, but it's still a personal experience. Yeah, we can scale it, but it's still a personal experience. And in that case, it's a different context. Now, the problem comes in when we start to mix these two things, when we want to have clarity and we are emotional about it. Then
Mhm.
is because then we start to argue, no, that is good, no, that is bad. And actually, none of us says anything because we haven't
No.
defined it. It's not, like I said, there is no clarity of understanding. And in your book, you developed a language so that we have clarity and understanding when we say bending and stretching. This is what we mean with it.
Yes.
And only
That.
when you do that, you can take the next step and use objective words. But what I
Yes.
sometimes hear from you is that we never should use subjective word. And that is
No.
not true either.
No. That's black and white. But
That is black
this
and
is
white.
what I said in the beginning. I try to do that. That's my choice. Train myself quite hard in that way to ignore it. And it's really hard, Sean, because I'm 60 years old. And if you are 55 years raised up through your environment, through all these words, it's not that
Yeah,
a
easy.
real hard challenge to get this out of your system,
Yeah,
in
and the
my
world,
system.
the world is, that's not an assumption because we can prove that the world is full of, and it's not about the subjectivity, it's about the prejudice behind it. And what I mean is like people who are heavy cannot dance. That's that's not a
Yes,
judgment. That's a
exactly.
prejudice. That's a prejudice.
Yes,
Black people have
and
more rhythm.
assumption too.
Yeah, black people have
Yeah.
more rhythm.
Wow.
Asian people are better in math. We are full of those kind of things. Full. And what you pointed out, or what we pointed out in the past, to become aware of where you have that in yourself, that's a journey. That's a journey.
Yeah, but it helps
Oh,
because
absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah.
I had also a prejudgment. How you call that word, Sean?
Prejudice.
Prejudice to a girl in my group in the hip hop
Hmm.
in my head. What I know already by myself, now I learn it in the hard way. I had in my mind she cannot do 20 push ups, and the other children also not. But she was quite heavy, or is quite heavy, and her body mass index it's quite more higher. That's your length with your weight, and then you get a BMI out of it, body mass index. And if you are higher than 30, then you have obesitas already. And if you are between 22 25
Yeah.
in the green area, yeah. But actually, it's not complete this BMI. It gives you only some
Indication.
indication.
Yeah.
Actually, you have to take your measures around your stomach and this, and you have more techniques to measure that. But the power training, I thought she will get it more harder with it.
Hmm.
And in the but this girl did a quite super job, because now she can do planking in 3 minutes, where the
Wow.
other one have already a
Give up.
challenge with, yeah, with 1 minute,
Wow.
of course. But I have also children there who are didn't practice that, slim or more wider. Then you can see, if you not train it, you cannot develop it. Now I train her already 1 year, and I see the development only when there was holidays and I have the same issues. If you not train 2 weeks, then it is a real challenge again to pick it up.
Yeah.
And that I feel with all the children here in my group. So, but with that assumption and that prejudgment, I say prejudgment because Deeple said it was a prejudgment. It's in my mind now. But anyway, it is incredible now to look blanco to a girl. Doesn't matter how she looks, tall, small, white, slim, whatever, very intelligent or even not, because I cannot measure that. But sometimes on the questions they're asked, I have an assumption, okay, she could be clever, but at the end, 3 months later, it's the other one where I thought it wasn't. So she is clever, but actually, it helped nothing to have that already pop up in that head, because it says nothing. Actually, every dancer where you work with, doesn't matter how old they are, they start from blanco, from zero, in my opinion, and then we will look how far we can get at that moment.
Yeah.
And then if we reach our goals for that moment, what we take, we can be satisfied, and everybody works on their own goals, on their own, yeah, development. And this is really wonderful, because now I go empty to it, and everybody has the on
Well,
the
not empty, with an open mind.
open mind. Yeah, not empty. It's not possible. That's my English, Sean.
That's okay.
But with the open mind, yes.
Yeah.
With the open mind, you go in it, and everybody have the same
Yeah.
value for you.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how they
No,
come in.
an open mind. These are not subjective. Open minds stimulates personal growth. Right? Closed mind, not so. By the way, you can use the word prejudgment. Prejudgment is just more positive. That means something like you already have an opinion without knowing all the facts. That's not per se
Mm,
negative, right? Prejudice is working from stereotypes. People from, like I said, Asian people know more math. That's a stereotype, right? Fat people cannot do planking, which is clearly a stereotype, as you proved.
yeah.
So the one is way more in Dutch. That would be vooroordeel, huh? Prejudice,
Mm,
and prejudgment is, yeah. In principle, you don't even have all the facts, and you already
mm.
have your opinion done. Yeah,
Yeah. What I
that's
not under,
yeah,
yeah.
that's not
What I
per se negative,
yeah.
but it is, yeah. You need to, well, you don't need to do anything from me, but we should try to avoid both of it.
Yes, absolutely. But what I not understand, Sean,
Hmm.
maybe you could help me. What I understand it one way, but in the other way, I'm not understand it. Why I have to be in ballet, the girls or the women's so slim, and why they must be so white, and
White
why
from a
they
color,
put
right?
it, yes, white from color and slim, very slim. Sometimes I think they have anorexia, so slim they are. um, I not understand that, but in the other way, it built up in history why it is like it is, because ballet is a quite, say, older dance form than ballroom and Latin, and even there is also stereotyping in it. I also not understand that, because the Latin dancers, I did the same, make their hair black, make their skin black, more brown, to look like a Latino, and also the dress they have. So I'm not understand all these stereotypes built up by history, of course. Well, maybe there are different reasons also in it. This I don't know yet. Interesting to find that out by research. And why they speak, when I listen to a lesson, it's full with subjective words. This is natural now. This is normal. This is good. This is better. And now, because you was sick now, you lost 6 kilos, Sean, and I
Well,
would
yeah,
say to you, and I would say to you, ah, Sean, finally you look super
better.
now,
You look
better
better.
now. That,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
that's
funny, Tom,
this.
because yeah,
Yeah.
I had from several people a reaction, and it's meant as a joke, but the underlying line is maybe not so funny. Funny how often I had a reaction like, "Oh, can you give me that illness too?" I told in the end I
Oh,
lost about 7 kilogram, and they said they meant it, of course, as a joke. Oh, well, maybe you should give me that illness too. So that there is an obsession of the thinner we are, the better it is, right? That's two subjective words in one, right?
and tall,
Huh? Oh yeah,
and tall.
oh yeah, tall. So, but you ask me where that's coming from. So somewhere and somewhen in ballet, as an example, there is a stereotype created, which is sub-established as being good. Yeah, there's a stereotype created in people's mind. And over time, that becomes a bias. Yeah, that's all subjective. It becomes a bias. If you fit in that stereotype, then you fit the norm, which is subjective norm. You can also have objective norm, but it's a subjective norm. And because we as I mean that's pure research. That's not an assumption, because most human beings have a tendency to conform, right? So we call that conformistic behavior. We want to fit the norm, right? We start to do that with more and more people start to drive themselves to the same point. And then the judgment in it is if you do something else, then it's wrong. That's where it becomes dangerous. If it's completely volunteer and that's what you want, hey, you and I have no problem in it. But when we have judgment over it, when someone else makes another choice, that's when we believe we should think a little bit longer. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's if you
Yes.
follow that in a, and it's complex. And I know you sometimes can see there is, you use the word anorexia in the 80s. In the 70s,
Hmm.
actually, there has been done numerous studies about ballet and the influence of ballet on girls, specifically, of becoming anorexia. And
Hmm.
also boys, by the way, but it had more effect on girls, and that is significant. These
Hmm.
biases and stereotypes are not without any danger. They are actually
Hmm.
they can actually affect the health. The rise of low self-esteem and self-worth is all coming from what we just talked about.
Also, the words, if they use some words in it, you this can follow your whole life, Sean.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
even 40,
Yeah.
50 years later, you still have that one word in the head pop up. It was bad, I was too fat, or etc. And this helps not grow of that person. It would help to grow, to let grow that person growing by using different words and to avoid this prejudgment and not prejudgment, this
Yeah, it
prejudice.
could be both. Could be both. If you with the group that I often work with is it's not only that I can do that to you, but a lot of children do it even to themselves, using
Correct.
subjective words to that self, and that lowers self-esteem.
Hmm.
uh,
Absolutely.
and that's when it becomes complex. And by you, and I do that hopefully too, by us in situations where we should be or could be objective, and we do that consistently, which is not so easy, as you and I know. It's not so easy. In this case, that is the right way of the word. It's challenging. That would be better, huh? It's challenging.
Yeah, it's a positive
Um,
word. Yeah.
is to do that is not only that we hopefully get more clarity in what we teach, but it also helps to change the mindset if it comes to these things.
Yeah. Yes. And even also for better, I use development for it, or I could perceive with a little bit context to it, from my
Yeah,
perceiving and my senses, I could
yeah,
um, see and perceive the development.
definitely.
And congratulations with this. Yes, now try to repeat it more and hold it
To
on
hold,
that level,
hold.
if that
Yeah,
would be possible.
yeah.
And
So, so I gave you the social and the psychological reasons of how
yeah,
this came into us, but there is also, and this is for me that triggers me in a way to kind of do something about it as best as we can. There is unfortunately also commercial reasons why people try to keep this alive. The whole branding, right? To wear Louis Vuitton instead of just a handbag that's practical is coming from the same
yeah.
source. Because if we
Mhm.
can give subjective value to a brand, it sells better. And people
Yeah.
believe that they are more worth if they are wearing brands. that's and you see that specifically in schools where some kids are just not accepted in a group because they
Mm.
cannot afford or they want to wear brands.
Yes. What
That's
now is
that's scary.
beautiful. Yes, absolutely, Sean. What now is beautiful, 100 year maybe ago, it was ugly.
Oh
So
yeah,
two
just
subjective words, a change during time
of course,
and even during culture. What one culture like is the other one don't like it at all. And yeah, that's even incredible when you think then back to the power groups of stereotyping in that certain area of ballet or ballroom dancing or hip hop
doesn't
or
matter. Could also
other
just
dance
look
form.
at you could all just look at businesses. Why is there so many suits in businesses? Is it practical? Is it, what is the reason behind it? Because there is a perceived value if I wear better clothes than you. It is a perceived form of power if I do that, right? It,
Mhm.
it, that's just, and yeah, I think I remember when I was working for a company and we had to wear ties. And I understand that we wear a certain, because we work with clients, so you want to have your clothes be clean and stuff like that. That's all kind of within the norm. But I started to wear a turtleneck, and my boss
Mhm.
was very negative and said, "Hey, you need to know that." I said, "Okay, objectively, you know, is what I tell to the clients." is that with less value if I wear a turtleneck? Or is it, what is it? Can you honestly tell me? That's not the point. Is it? Okay, why is that not the point? Is it, if you help me understand, maybe I'm agreeing with your statement that I have to wear a tie, but I clearly don't understand. Yeah, I clearly don't
Mm-hmm.
understand. So, but because then you get what you and I sometimes hear. Yes, that's because it's the rule. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And does that make it correct or better or whatever you think of it? See, that comes often from subjective things and not seeing that the world is changing too.
Yeah, but you can actually not, with your sensory perceiving, you cannot perceive that the world is changing because it goes so slow, Sean.
Not in everything.
Not in everything. Yeah, in ballet it goes very slow, the changing. If I see in the stereotyping, but that's my judgment on it. And
Yeah, well, as long as you don't hurt people by it, I have
yeah,
no problem with it at all. But the moment, and that's probably why you are more emotional connected to it, you have seen firsthand that people are actually hurt by it, by the
yeah,
stereotypes. And there are,
yes,
I can come up if I do a research, there are many situations where it's okay, it's fine. It doesn't really matter, you know. But when people get hurt by it and unfairness comes into play, that's what we talk about.
yes.
That's
It
what we talk about.
leads to exclusion
Yeah,
actually, and not inclusion.
exactly.
And if
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Exactly. That then it
and
becomes like you gave that example. If upfront the rules are very, very clear, it could at least be, at least people are informed. But unfortunately, that is not the case.
no, no, and so we speak and we feel both very comfortable, Sean, in our talking
Yeah,
because we are think the same, not exactly the same, but it's comfortable. We have not disagreements. But the issue is if you have disagreements, that makes let you grow. So if you are disagree with us, yes, that's absolutely super actually, because try to work with objective words without assumptions, without judgment, without
prejudice.
just
Yeah,
prejudice and stereotyping. That will let you grow. Think about that one. And you could not be agree with us. That's fine. But you stay in your comfort zone. That's an assumption and a judgment now, because not everybody has that. Uh, but there are people they don't want to work on them. It's again a judgment what they're doing, an assumption. But in the practical way, in by my environment, I feel that every day, and it felt like I'm now the stranger one. But the groups who I'm working with, that's beautiful because this is where I have influence on it as a speaker. And this makes the difference when I'm there and speak about it. And then hopefully some people will think about it. And if I will repeat it and I work more often with them, then they learn this language without to use too many of these assumptions and subjective words. But I know also to find balance in it, but I'm quite extreme in it. And in my own mother language, it makes it for me, I can only speak for me, a little bit easier than in a different language.
Yeah, no, I did say that. But so first of all, there is a lot of people have taken over this thing, right? Growth is outside your comfort zone. Without that's an assumption. Without thinking what it means, you could change that and saying growth is is outside everything you agree with. Think about it. Growth
Yes,
is
or
out, is
yes.
out. Yeah, because the moment you start to disagree, that feels uncomfortable, and research it. You can always go back and saying, oh, okay, yeah, I research it now. I stay with what I believed. Great, right? But if you hardwire stay with what you believe without researching it or without letting the other person explain what they mean, you get arguments. Try not to
Mhm.
argue. We don't have to, you and I don't have to agree at all with anything, but we could still be the best of friends.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
But
could be.
still, if you know white, we know white now, and we
Yeah,
know black. But if you only can speak about white and you not know what black is,
exactly.
you need
Exactly.
both. Also,
Exactly.
the against that let you grow. The conflict also. This is what you let you grow. And if we would speak only about white, Sean, the color white, then we are all with all agree. But sometimes you need also that conflict.
Well, you need the
If
conflicts.
you,
Yeah. All scientific research, you know, starts with an hypothesis. And that's always an elaborate word of assumption.
mm,
All scientific research starts with an hypothesis. When we believed that the Earth was
correct.
flat, the hypothesis is what if the Earth would not be flat, right? What if the Earth would be round at that time? But if no one would have formulated that hypothesis, we would not know what we do know now. We never
Mm,
stumble on anything by not formulating in a scientific way, by not formulating first a solid hypothesis, and an hypothesis is almost always against what we already know. Does that make sense?
mhm, mhm.
So growth is
Yes.
always outside what we already know, and that could be personal, right? I still come across people who say, "Yeah, but I don't believe it." I said, it's nothing to do with what you believe. That is proven to be right for this moment, at least, right? So one of the discoveries of the last couple of decades is we believe that we could know that there's nothing go faster than light, and quantum physics proved that there is something faster than light. It's very hard to understand how that works, but it is there. It's a
Yeah.
proven thing. And so you see that immediately in dancing, in classical ballet, is there was, and there probably still is, a big stereotype that you have to fit a certain mold, otherwise you will not be a good ballet dancer. Now,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
is a dangerous way of thinking. That is a
Yeah.
very dangerous way of thinking.
Coming back to the quantum, you have now quantum computers, and
Yeah, but that's a
it will
fancy
change.
word.
And
Yeah, no, but that's a fancy word, Ton. The According to quantum physics, there is there is not yet a quantum computer. I mean, we do quantum healing. We do. I mean, everything adds the word quantum
well,
in front of it. Without it, you can research it because that.
yeah,
But
then I listen to a different podcast. They
yeah,
speak about the quantum computer, how they connect all these computers, and
yeah.
with a
So
different
yeah,
technology.
yeah, it's a different technology. But let's not debate about that because
No, 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 no. Of
let's not
course not.
debate about that. But I know where that word is coming from. But yeah, there are people talking about quantum healing, which sounds
No,
very
no.
fancy,
And,
and it's also. Does that make sense?
yes, but words are not common for me. I don't use them, so because I'm not familiar with it. I'm only familiar with it, what I can say in the group. And this is to let them feel them safe, let them feel that they can grow in a lesson, try to bring the critics on a positive way, to say what they must do and not to say what they not must do. When I would say, you don't close your feet, you not jump high enough, you are not fast enough, that's all, that's
Yeah,
fake for me. I would say, please, I perceive that you didn't close the feet. But first, before I would say that, I would say the assignment was
yeah.
to close the feet. Uh, did you close the feet? I would ask to the person, no, okay, as I perceive that you didn't close there. Maybe you could close there.
But
But anyway,
you know that there is what we call ambiguity in the assignment itself, right? You have to be, and that's
mm,
what you and I learned. We have to be so precise because you and I now assume that close the feet would be did. What if they would have done that?
yeah,
Still close
mm,
the feet. It's just
or
crossed
this,
over,
or
or
this,
this, or this, and
or,
that's you and
yeah,
I have discovered that. Oh my gosh, we have to be so precise, and that was a challenge. And coming
really
back
is.
on your quantum computer, they will crack that code at some point in time because it goes with an assumption. Can we go from a sequential computer to a quantum computer? Now, we haven't cracked that code yet, but if they don't start working on it, it will never happen.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. And I'm
Mm,
sure, well, we that never know for sure, but if they, if you look at AI now, the AI from 3 months ago is literally something like comparing a car from today with a car from the 60s. That's how fast the development goes.
with
It's just
everything, Sean.
and that is just mind-boggling. So the moment I say something, let's say about quantum computer, then you say, "Oh, hey Jean, but I listened to a new podcast and they actually already there." So then I say, "Oh, can you let me listen to that?" to that. So I talked to some people and I said, there is always a higher level of understanding than we think there is. When we think we know everything about, you and I don't think that, but when we think we know everything about dancing, you will always come into a group where you think, oh, they know more. And this is where the danger comes in of subjective words, because
Mm,
the people who use a lot of subjective words pretend that they know everything because they
they
say
have
this is
truth.
how it should be.
Yeah, that's
That
the
does that
truth.
make sense, Don? They
Yes,
and the
absolutely.
more you and I go the opposite, the more we know how little we know.
Yeah. I, we were in Berlin. Can you remember in December?
Yeah,
For
of course.
also we were in the sports seminar of
Yeah,
Peter Mangelsdorff
yeah,
for ballroom and Latin there.
yeah,
And there's one wonderful lady there, Lorraine Berry. I
yeah,
have a deep respect for her, and she's wonderful in her teaching. But she said, I teach my own truth. And I was a little bit shocked. She said it in a different way. I teach only the truth.
yeah,
Okay. And I said to her, the truth not exist. And she looked to me, yes, it's the truth. When I tell it like that, I said, you have many perspective how you can watch to it or perceive it or teach it. It could be on a different way. If you say, if you do it like this, natural, then it will be natural and it gets easy. That's your vision of the world. And I said, actually, the truth never exists. It works for every human being differently in their mind, in their feeling, and how they perceive it. And after a while, she was thinking, because in the beginning she was a little bit fighting against it, and that's fine too. And then I saw her eyes thinking, and then it gets more to, it came by her through. Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
it's way
maybe
true.
it's
Yeah. No, I think it's perfectly fine to say I teach what I believe this moment, right?
yes,
That's fine.
yeah,
But if you say I teach the truth, then wow, there are probably some areas, and I was doing a discussion with an AI. So in this podcast, I talked about some common accepted beliefs that are not true. One of them is the Cartesian dualism from René Descartes, where we believe there's a separation of body and mind, and you and I have to fight almost for that is just simply not true, right? And there are still people who believe that the world is flat, and that is simply not true. And there is definitely quantum, again, proof that it is not always first this and then that. Sometimes things happen at the same time. Dances prove that too. We do it at the same time. So this is my question to you, Ton. There must be beliefs that we currently have that in next year, 10 years will be proven wrong. We just don't know what they are. But an
yeah,
open mind is always aware that what I say today can be proven in a different way later on. So
yeah,
there is no way we can ever say this is the truth. There is
no,
simply no way, because like the speed of light that we said, or when I said quantum computer, not yet. They said, well, I listened to a podcast, like, oh, then I think like, oh, let me find a podcast too. That there is
yes,
nothing,
I
there
will
is
send it to you.
there is nothing that we can say for sure it is like that. Nothing.
No,
Yeah,
no,
that
no,
does,
nothing.
but there's a danger in that, right? You have to have, which is an assumption, a pretty confident mind to accept that as the truth, that nothing is true. Because it could make you very insecure, right? It could make, if oh man, if nothing is true, then so you still have to stick with what you believe today. That's great.
Mm,
But
mm,
willing to change it tomorrow.
yeah,
That is what we constantly do. We just
yeah,
demonstrated with our little discussion about the quantum computer. And oh,
yeah.
okay, if he listened to a podcast, I want to hear that podcast too, right?
Mm,
And without prejudgment or prejudice, because if I listen to it, yeah, I'm listening to it, but it is not true anyhow, then better not listen
mm.
to it.
Well, I will send it to you, Sean.
Yeah,
I
and that is true in so many areas. Um,
yes,
and that's the
it's on.
that's the that's the growth mindset, is challenge
Yeah,
your own beliefs.
mhm. It's on de Universiteit van Nederland. That was Dutch.
Yeah,
So the
but
University
which
of,
one? We
the
have a
Netherlands.
lot of them.
Uh, they have 650, but the most of them are listened to it and really interested. And also our language, Sean,
Mhm.
how where it came from, the sound where it came from. Go into the history, how your language developed, how many new words we get in our language now. Our language is so growing. It's like the car or the computers. It's
Yeah,
you cannot stop it. We get more new words every month, more than we can think, because we get new jobs, new terminologies, like computer. For 100 years it wasn't there, and
do you
computer
know
was
where the
first.
do you know where the word computer is coming
No, Sean.
from? It comes from the word computer. It's French for calculating.
Hmm.
And
Calculating, yeah,
the old computers were just only
calculating.
calculating. The modern computer is doing way more things, but we stuck to the old word computer.
Yes, yeah, but through this computer, we get many new
Words
terminologies, words.
or the
Not
games.
many. We get a new terminology with many new words. That's what I wanted to say. And also there, the language is growing. So we learn during time how to use these words. And the same you could do with the objective words that not exist actually, not all, but with the subjective words, how you use the words, with the assumptions, with the even try to speak and to ignore not. That would be a really, really challenging something if you would try that.
Yeah. Do you
And
know
it's
the psychological reason for that?
no, Sean.
Well, if I say to you, don't drop that, right? The brain actually don't accept the word don't. So basically I say drop that. Your brain starts to hear drop it. Yeah? Don't be so
Yeah,
slow. You actually give someone the assignment to be slow.
yeah,
So so that is has no that has been researched actually quite intensively. But you hear, and I probably did it as a parent too, right? Don't scream instead of can you talk a little bit, calmer, you know. So we do it all the and it's really hard to not do that. I mean, I tried it many times, like, oh, and then I have to correct myself afterwards, and I hope there will be a day that I don't have to correct myself, that I can give the positive assignment instead of the negative
yes,
assignment. But it is hard. Yeah,
yes. Now I do it differently, Sean.
yeah. Tell me.
Before I said also don't scream. Now I ask them, why you screaming?
Yeah, that would be another way to ask. Yeah, I like that.
Now I perceive that you are
Mm,
screaming. Can you tell me why you are so loud?
yeah,
Um, and then they say, some of them, I'm not loud, I'm not screaming. Okay, then I ask them, can you tell me the definition of it?
yeah. You could also
So I
say,
try to
yeah,
find a different way
yeah,
to ignore it. But again, it so takes so much power from you sometimes to, yeah. But after five, six times, I say, stop. And they don't stop. And then I ask them, what do you understand under the word stop?
yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes it helps, sometimes it's a challenge. It
yeah.
stays a challenge and it not helps. But each person is different, think different, feel
Completely,
different.
completely.
And
Yeah. There is this. Well, it's maybe not a research, but it is at least, people looked at it. I'm not sure if it's scientific research, but people looked at it. People in the US tend to speak much louder than, for instance, the people in most Asian countries. And I experienced this firsthand when I was visiting classes in Singapore, and I felt, wow, they all talk so soft. I really had to lean into them in a classroom situation because I could
correct,
hardly, because they, and then I noticed, well, wow. So what I think is loud, I think like, wow, that must be screaming for them, you know. So that's what you talk about. If I would say to them, can you speak a little bit up? They might already think, wow, I felt that I'm already screaming. Or so if I say, don't talk so soft, that that doesn't work, right? I can only say, I have a harder time to understand you. Would you mind speaking a little bit louder? Then it's clear. If I say, don't talk so soft, not so clear. They don't know why they should do it. They don't. They have no. There's no context. There's no
Mhm,
context.
mhm. Yes, yes. The context I give them also when they're screaming, because and this is an assumption because I cannot speak for other people, but I assume you will get the other dancers out of the concentration, out of their attention, out of their focus, and
Oh, nice.
by your
Yeah,
screaming, by
related to
allowed,
other, related to the
yeah,
effect on other people. That's also nice.
yes,
Yeah, we
yes,
could also
and
do that with assumptions set on, instead of saying it's
mm,
wrong, but, help them through the process.
that's an
W-
assumption. Yes,
Yeah, why? But no, when I have an assumption, it's not only effect to me, but it could also have a negative effect on other people. And to
yeah,
teach that to children in a very young age in a kind of playful way dance, I think it's brilliant. I think
mm,
it teach them that those are all assumptions, but I think it could teach them life lessons that goes way beyond the dance class.
yes, absolutely, and I feel that also when they go into school now.
Yeah,
But they say also on school the teacher talks also like that.
of
Yeah,
course. Most of them.
yes,
Yeah,
most
yeah,
of them.
yeah,
And then I asked one of my students, asked your mother, because she is her teacher in the school in the eighth grades,
yeah.
what is concentration, attention, and focus? And please tell me what is the difference then, because and the mother said, today I don't have time for that.
Oh yeah,
That
that's a
was
typically Dutch say. Ja, daar heb ik nu geen tijd voor.
there I
Yeah,
don't have
that's
time for it.
nice.
I said,
Well,
actually, you could assume what
yeah,
Mama, your mother, the
yeah,
teacher, tried to tell.
yeah,
Actually, you assumed that she would know it, and she said no, she didn't know
yeah.
it.
But
Yeah.
and you said it has a long term in the beginning of the podcast said these things can have a long term effect on people, right? I
Yes.
know that some of the people around me here, some have actually called themselves one of my best friends. They started to make remarks on my English pronunciation.
Yeah.
And then someone said, I don't understand that a man with your intelligence still talks like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
That.
and then I thought, how so I have with some words I have a difficulty, but I can tell you honestly, Tom, when I say these words, I can feel still what they said.
Yes.
Although I try not to think about it like, but I can still feel it, and that's what you and I try to convey to the children. It doesn't only feel bad in that moment, but it can have a really, really long impact. A really long
Yeah.
impact. So the words that start with a TH, and then
Hmm.
so I said 1, 2, 3, right? And then they say, oh, a whole forest full of trees. And at some point in time, I thought that's not even funny. It's not that I'm not trying to say the word correctly, right? And then I discovered that Irish people actually say it the way how I say it.
Hmm.
And, and then there was the word ID, right, which could be ID from identification or an ID. And
Yeah.
I
Idea.
have a little bit hard word to say idea, right? And every time when I say the word, I still and then this person said, and if by the way, if you listen to the podcast, you know exactly what I mean. This person actually believed that he or she talks without any accent, which is absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
Because
But
if you
Sean, look at like that. The goal is that they understand you.
exactly,
And if they understand you, don't make an issue how you pronounce something. And
not at all.
exactly the same with dancing with movement.
Exactly.
It
That's why I
works the
came.
same.
That's why I came to the topic. Remember?
Yeah.
And 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 in the beginning, by the way, you had the same thing. You said, "Charm, but my English is not good." I said, "Ton, we understand each other, right?" I said,
No, my English is terrible, but still I make the podcast.
Exactly.
but I have a negative view of my English.
You do.
But it's a fact that I have my word of or treasures of words that take from the Dutch. My vocabulary is not so wide yet, but I'm really improving and developing. My friend in South Africa, Greg Bullock and Mandy, I miss them. Hello,
Yeah, I
if you
miss
would
them too, by
listen
the
to it.
way. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
we used to talk to
yes.
them
They
so
said,
often.
John, you really improved your English. So I'm growing like 2 meters, Sean. And
Yeah.
anyway, and a compliment can bring so much to take even more effort to it. And that works exactly the same in dancing. So if you ignore that subjective words, assumptions, the preju- prejudice, I
Yeah,
try to
prejudice. Yeah.
do prejudice, yes, stereotyping, what we have more, our
Yeah, our biases,
we
our
are talking more.
prejudgments,
Yeah,
all
yes,
that,
yes, yes.
all that stuff. It's
If you would
amazing.
work on that one and you would work on yourself for it if you want, because if you are not motivated for it, it will not happen. So it's just some word, maybe if you would listen to it, maybe it puts to yourself to thinking. Because could you change yourself to use different words? Would that be possible? You would probably say, yes, it would be probably yes would be the word. But if you would do it, that's something different. So you cannot only think about it, you have to do it. And this is what happened in the dancing. They want to make shortcuts, that's the assumption, to do everything and do it like that way, then it's the truth. But you are always able to learn that, what you learn from that teacher, and be able to manipulate it later and change it to your way. It's the same with the language and the same with movement.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so translatable to all areas of life almost. The growth that you get by uh, by avoiding subjective words when they are not appropriate is has such an impact.
Yeah.
I always had that, right. So my son was and prejudice. My son was he was. I mean, my son is gay, and he was scolded out. You know, people called him name by a certain ethnic group. And
Mm.
he said at some point in time, it's always the people from those ethnic group. So all people from that ethnic group must hate gay people. I said, that is the difference between facts and prejudice. So the fact is that you got scolded out every time by someone from that ethnic group. That's a fact. But to say that everyone from that ethnic group is against gay, that is prejudice.
Mm.
And he said, okay, yeah, Dad, I think I get that. I can that it's not easy, right? It's not easy because he was hurt. And it's not easy, but to see that is the difference between stereotyping and looking at the facts.
Mm.
That's the point. We are at an hour and 10 minutes.
Oh, wow, Sean.
Really good because we are enthusiastic about
Unbelievable.
this topic.
Yes, very enthusiastic.
In the Dutch version, I think we
But
had also a long, a long talk about this. All
long,
right,
yeah.
let's come
But
to a
it is,
close. We had a nice close that a lot of the things we said you can add in a lot of areas and definitely in dance. See the logic and hopefully the challenge in to avoid subjective words and the word not. So try to say it positive. It's a challenge. Just try it, even if you don't agree with Ton and me. Just see it as a challenge then to try it and see what the effect is on your students if you teach or on your environment if you don't teach. And then come
Mhm.
back to us. And Ton and I still have to go a long way. but we do our best. We think about it
Yes, yes,
every
yes.
day. We do it. We think about it every day. This particular thing,
Yeah,
I think about it every day.
yeah, that's
I do.
truth. Uh,
I do.
yes, and
Yeah.
you could change people's life with how you use the
And your
words.
own. And your own. And your own
Yeah,
life.
and your own life. Yeah, yeah. First your own life,
Yeah.
and then try to influence the
Oh,
other ones,
definitely.
and try to discover what you didn't know, discover before, and then you can make even a bigger impact. There's no assumption than before, because what you had before needed to come there where you are now. And if you want to come further, go in with an open mind.
Open mind hopefully leads to a growth mindset.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, it was a pleasure talking to you about this. I noticed that this is one of your hot buttons, that
Yes.
is not an
Yes.
assumption because I've talked with you enough to know that it is, and there is still so many things to learn. It's very connected to the words we use, right? It's another podcast. I just wanted to say that. And it can be easily applied to dance and other areas of life. That's my closing words. I'm not sure if you have a few more, but we are way
No,
over our
Sean.
normal time. We are
Yes.
way over
Next
time.
time, next podcast will be about terminology.
Terminology. So it's a very related topic. Yeah, it's a very related topic, but from a different perspective. All
Yes.
right. I am looking forward to that. Always curious what you come up with and how we can discuss this.
Yes.
So, all right. You can find. Oh, I need to, of course, close it off, Tom. I almost
Yes. Yes.
forgot. I almost forgot. So, dear people, this was Beyond Judgment, Subjectivity, and Assumption in Dance. And if you sometimes hear that Ton and I can, be very heated in our discussions, we are used to each other, and that's how we feel we grow. But having said that, I'm starting the music at the same time. Is You can find us on Spotify, Dance-Gems, on Apple at Dance-Gems, YouTube at tongreten/podcast. We have our own website, www.gems.dance.pod/podcast. I'm so sorry. And of course, you can find us on Facebook. And we recently also have started a very dedicated app group. And please send Ton or me a message if you want to be there. It is actually for free at this moment, and it gives you tons of information around Gem and our podcast. That's what I said, Ton. Thank you so much for being a great friend, and someone with tremendous knowledge, which is an assumption, with tremendous
Yes.
knowledge in this. But I enjoy it every time.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you, listeners. Till next time.
Till next time. Bye bye.